Well, new year brings new scams.
Yeah, there are new fraudsters at work, but now you can say that you've been warned about them. Consumer reporter Steve Noviello is here with some tips. Good morning.
Good morning to you guys. You know, we're going to start with calls from debt collectors. We talked last week about registering your cell phone for the Do Not Call registry. Well, it turns out the federal government may be working against you. Take a look at some video we've got for you. Congress passed a little tiny provision into the recent Bipartisan Budget Act, which repeals the part of the federal law that prevented robocalls to cell phones. So it allows calls to anyone who owes money to the federal government or who has a loan backed by the government. So think back taxes, a student loan, mortgage backed by the feds, any kind of federal related loan. Now, because we're going to see an increase in those kinds of robocalls, we will also see a jump in the number of fraudsters trying to impersonate those kinds of calls. So what to do? If you ever get a call from somebody who insists you owe them money, the best thing to do is say, perfect, I would like to conduct this business in person. Please give me some sort of office address that I can visit, that I can first verify, and if everything works out, I'm happy to come down and do the transaction in person. I guarantee you one of two things will happen. You will either get legitimate information or you'll suddenly hear that familiar sound of a dial tone coming from the other line.
Yeah, that phone probably click off. The other thing I've tried very successfully when these people call is say, please tell me more. Send it to my home address, which you must have since you have my phone number. Click.
Take up just a little bit of their time so that they have less time to, harass the next guy.
So it's an election year. God forbid that anybody would try to cheat you using the election, politics.
Well, and unfortunately, here's the big thing. Whenever we have some sort of big event year, like an election year, we always see a rise in scams. Take a look at some video we've got for you. Look, at the end of the day, there will be legitimate requests for campaign contributions, but it's important to verify that any call from a political campaign is coming from a legitimate campaign source. In fact, there is never a time you should ever give your personal financial information to anybody over the phone unless you initiate the phone call to a business with which you have previously done business. If you want to make a campaign contribution, well, go to their verified website and do it there. It's the safest place to do it.
And then I read this, I'm going to make sure I'm reading this correctly. You were telling people to lie?
Yes. Here's the deal. Look, all of those authentication questions that we get about our identity, what are they usually? Where did you grow up? What's your mother's maiden name? What's your pet's name? What's the first car you ever drove? I can probably get about 50 to 75% of that information just by going to your Facebook. So instead, here's the deal, folks. The answers to those questions don't have to be true. They just have to match whatever you inputted when you were first asked the security questions. So maybe it's time to start lying, right? Look around the room. Mother's maiden name, chair. Where were you born? Plant in the corner. What was the name of your first pet? Outlet. Look, you want to choose answers that are almost impossible for somebody else to duplicate. The trick, of course, is remembering your lie so that when you are asked to validate your own identity, you're able to input that information. But, the idea of, thinking that, especially for a woman, your mother's maiden name or is something that you can get. I can look up my friends' mothers on Facebook and see their maiden name, usually in parentheses in their profile. It's not difficult information to get.
Right. Yeah.
Very true.
And very good advice. I mean, as a seasoned liar.
That one was for you.
You totally agree with this.
I had you in mind when I wrote that.